Welcome back to the Deep Dive. I am your host, and today we are getting into something that, honestly, it kind of challenges a lot of our modern assumptions.
I am your expert for today. And yes, this source material definitely hits hard right out of the gate.
We are looking at a text called The Mission We All Share by Chris R. Velasquez. And the main goal of our deep dive today is to unpack this major shift he talks about, moving from just doing things to actually being sent.
Right, because we live in a culture that is just, obsessed with efficiency.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, in the corporate world, success is weirdly easy to measure. You just look at profit margins or quarterly growth.
You count the clicks and the likes.
Yeah, if the line on the graph goes up,
You are winning.
exactly. If it goes down, you are losing. It is clean and brutally efficient.
We love that clarity. It tells us exactly where we stand. But that clarity completely evaporates when you try to apply it to something intangible.
Like a spiritual life, or I don't know, how do you measure the actual impact of a community mission?
You really can't use the same tools. And that is the exact tension Velasquez introduces. We often confuse activity with impact. We confuse being busy with being obedient.
There's this quote early on that I think frames everything. He writes, "Numbers reveal activity. They do not reveal obedience."
That is a very heavy statement.
It is. But okay, let me play devil's advocate for a second here. Because I read that and my immediate reaction was, well, that sounds nice and poetic, but does it actually work in the real world?
You mean from an organizational standpoint?
Right. If I'm running a charity or a community group, don't I need the numbers? If literally 0 people show up to the soup kitchen, isn't that a failure?
That is a totally fair pushback. And Velasquez actually addresses this. He calls it the metrics trap.
Okay, so he's not saying numbers are inherently evil.
No, not at all. You still need to count how many meals you serve. But he is saying they're insufficient for evaluating spiritual health. He argues that addition is not the same as evaluation.
Unpack that a bit. Because to me, addition, like more people or more money, usually equals success.
Usually, yes. But when we rely solely on those visible metrics, we fall victim to the limits of visible metrics.
Which means what exactly?
It means those numbers can tell you if your marketing worked. They can tell you if an event was popular. But they absolutely cannot tell you if you are actually changing lives.
So what falls through the cracks on the spreadsheet?
The internal stuff. A spreadsheet misses the quiet repentance of a hardened heart. It misses the hidden perseverance of someone praying for years without any recognition.
Oh, I see. Or in a workplace context, it misses the integrity of someone who refuses to cut corners when no one is looking.
Exactly. You cannot put integrity on a bar graph.
You definitely can't chart, didn't steal office supplies today.
Right. And the psychological danger here is that what is easily counted can quietly replace what is eternally significant.
So we just start optimizing for the graph.
We do. If you only value what you can measure, you eventually stop doing the things that cannot be measured.
You start playing to the algorithm, basically.
You stop doing the slow and messy, invisible work of relationship building because it doesn't show up in the quarterly report. You start asking, how do we get a crowd? Instead of, how do we make disciples?
Which connects directly to this idea of identity confusion. He argues that when people check out of a mission, the problem isn't usually laziness.
No, it is that they have forgotten who they are.
He uses the early church as a counterexample, and it is wild to think about. First century, no buildings, no stained glass, no professional worship bands.
They didn't even have fixed meeting places half the time.
And yet, historically, they had the most explosive momentum of almost any movement ever.
They turned the Roman Empire upside down.
So logically, they should have failed without all the infrastructure. What did they have?
They had identity. They didn't view mission as a program you just volunteer for on a Tuesday night. They viewed it as who they were.
He uses the phrase identity precedes function.
That is the core of it.
Yeah.
You don't do things to become a missionary. You are sent, so therefore you do things.
It is like the difference between acting like a runner because you bought the expensive shoes versus running because you are a runner.
Exactly. If you identify as a runner, you run whether it is raining or sunny. If you just do running occasionally, you stop the minute it gets hard.
The early church didn't need a missions committee because everyone knew they were the strategy, which leads into the theology of place.
Because if you accept that you are sent, the immediate next question is, sent where?
And that brings up the Great Commission, go therefore. I think for a lot of people that triggers a very specific image of packing your bags and moving to a jungle overseas.
And if you don't do that, you feel like you're just on the B team staying home.
Yes, exactly.
Velasquez calls that the go misconception, We romanticize distance. We think mission only counts if it involves a passport.
But he makes a critical distinction about the original language there, right?
He does. The Greek structure of that command implies, as you were going, mission isn't just crossing an ocean, it is crossing the street.
So it is not stop what you are doing and go somewhere else. It is while you are going about your normal life.
There is a great story in the text about a struggling church that completely turned things around just by asking one disruptive question.
Where has God already placed you?
It shifts the whole paradigm. Instead of come to our church events, it becomes be the church in your workplace.
It completely reorients the map. Your office or your gym or your kitchen table is the mission field. He calls this ordinary proximity.
We overlook the people sitting literally right next to us because we are looking for some grand adventure out there.
Which is honestly an avoidance tactic sometimes. It is way easier to dream about saving people on another continent than to love the annoying neighbor who mows his lawn at 7 in the morning on a Saturday.
Ouch. But very true.
Let's get practical, though. The story of the nurse in the urban hospital really grounded this idea of incarnational witness with me.
Incarnational witness is a lofty theological term, but it just means embodying your values in your actual physical environment. Your presence is the message.
So this nurse, she wasn't standing on a chair in the cafeteria preaching sermons. She wasn't handing out pamphlets to patients.
Which would have gotten her fired and alienated everyone. That is imposing, not witnessing.
Right. Instead, she treated patients as image bearers. She stayed calm under pressure when everyone else was freaking out, and she absolutely refused to participate in gossip at the nurse's station.
Refusing to gossip in a toxic work environment is a radical act.
Yeah.
It creates a vacuum that makes people curious.
But did it actually work? Going back to my devil's advocate question.
If you tracked conversions per day, she was failing. But over time, her colleagues noticed she was different, and they trusted her. Eventually, when life hit them hard, they asked her about her hope. That earns trust rather than demanding attention.
He provides a visual framework for this called concentric zones of influence.
It is a way to see where you were sent. You have your family as the immediate foundation, then work and school, where you spend most of your time, then your community.
Mission ripples outward. You can't ignore your family or be a jerk to your coworkers and expect to change the world.
The ripples stop immediately if you do that.
Okay, so let's say a listener buys into this. They accept their identity and their place at the cubicle. The terrifying part is, how do you actually talk about it without feeling like you need a PhD in theology?
We get paralyzed by complexity. Velisis says complex visions fail, not because they lack depth, but because they lack accessibility.
He compares it to the gospel itself. Christ died and rose again. It is one sentence, simple enough for a child, but deep enough for centuries of study.
He quotes Habakkuk 2:2. Write the vision, make it plain so that a herald may run with it. If the message is too complicated, you can't run with it. You stumble.
If you can't articulate your faith in a sentence, you probably won't share it at all out of fear.
Simplicity is key. And the tool he offers for ordinary people to use is testimony.
Isn't testimony just a religious word for a personal story, though?
It is a specific kind of story. And he distinguishes between testimony and apologetics. Apologetics is defending the faith with arguments and logic.
Which definitely has its place.
It does, but arguments answer questions while relationships answer doubts. Testimony is just saying, this is what happened to me. It is unarguable.
No one can fact-check your feelings or your lived experience.
Exactly. You can debate theology all day long, but you cannot debate that I was sad and now I have hope.
I loved the part about the theology of weakness. Because normally when you sell an idea, you hide the flaws and present the Instagram version of your life.
But God prefers jars of clay. It is counterintuitive. We think we need to be perfect to represent God. We think we need to get our act together first.
But admitting weakness actually makes a witness more credible.
Perfection creates distance. Honesty creates connection.
So to the listener who thinks their life is a mess and they can't help anyone, this book says your mess is the point of connection.
Your struggle is the bridge.
He gives a very usable 4-part structure for telling your story. Let's walk through it. Step 1 is before Christ.
This isn't just listing a resume of sins for shock value. It is about identifying what was missing, the longing or the emptiness. You want to connect with the feeling the other person has right now.
Step 2 is the encounter.
How did the shift happen? And it doesn't have to be a dramatic lightning bolt. It can be a quiet conversation or a realization while reading. Just the turning point.
Step 3 is after.
This is about transformation, not perfection. Maybe you still get angry, but you handle it differently. You have to be real, because if you claim your life is perfect, people know you are lying.
And step 4 is present hope.
Why does this matter today? It connects the past to the present morning when you read the news.
Before, encounter, after, present hope. You could tell that story in 60 seconds.
And your individual story is part of a much larger story. This brings in the historical and theological backbone of the book.
The concept of missio Dei, the mission of God.
Mission isn't a program of the church. The church is an instrument of God's mission. It started in Genesis and goes to Revelation. We are stepping into a river that is already flowing.
He uses the Moravians from the 1700s as historical proof, and their story is unbelievable.
Led by Count Zinzendorf, they were basically poor refugees living in Germany with no political power. But they started a prayer movement that lasted 100 years nonstop.
24 hours a day for a century, they took shifts.
An unbroken chain of intercession. And from that room, they sent missionaries globally, including 2 young men who wanted to reach enslaved people in the West Indies.
And the slave owners wouldn't let outsiders on the plantations.
So these 2 Moravian men voluntarily sold themselves into slavery just so they could work alongside the people they wanted to reach.
They left their families forever. As the ship pulled away, they shouted, "May the lamb that was slain receive the reward of his suffering."
It makes our modern definition of commitment look incredibly shallow.
It really does.
And their secret wasn't that they were superhuman. It was collaboration and collective vision. They lived as an interconnected society on a mission.
Which ties into the Protestant doctrine of the priesthood of believers.
In the Old Testament, the heavy curtain in the temple separated the people from the Holy of Holies. Only the high priest went in.
It was a literal keep-out sign.
But in the New Testament, when Jesus dies, that veil is torn. There is no sacred distance anymore. Every believer is a priest.
So if you delegate your spiritual job to a professional pastor, you are abdicating your role.
You are essentially trying to sew the veil back up because it is easier. But it is not the mission.
So bringing this all down to the pavement, we're all busy with jobs and kids. How do we organize our lives around this identity?
Villesa suggests creating a rule of life. And don't let the word rule scare you. It comes from the Greek word for trellis.
So it is a support structure for a vine, not a cage.
A vine without a trellis is a muddy, trampled mess. A vine with a trellis grows upward and bears fruit. A rule of life is an intentional rhythm that aligns your schedule with your identity.
It asks, does my calendar reflect that I'm sent or just that I'm busy? And there is an exercise for this called the mental bandwidth audit.
You list your 10 mental loops, the things playing on repeat in your brain, like, my boss is annoying, or what if the economy crashes?
And you decide which ones actually deserve your energy, because worry consumes the bandwidth that mission requires.
If you are constantly looping on things you can't control, you have no capacity to notice the person next to you.
It clears the clutter for the final challenge Velazquez leaves us with, and I want you listening to really chew on this.
Yeah.
He asks, if your story is the one resource no one else can replicate, why leave it unused?
Your theology might be shaky, but no one can debunk your lived experience.
What conversations might change if you stop trying to be convincing and started being honest?
Stop trying to win the argument. Just be honest about the hope you have.
Mission isn't necessarily about going to the ends of the earth. It starts with being present and realizing you are already exactly where you are supposed to be.
You are already sent.
So to everyone listening, go use your story. Thanks for joining this deep dive, and we will catch you next time.